And then the next thing I want to do is I want to actually try to create some of this three-dimensional geo that's going on for the TV screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my 4 central faces, and I'm going to hit grow to grow my selection, and then I'm going to hit inset. And because of the fact that I've kept my geo nice and concentric, which is the reason why I had to set up my geo the way I did in the first place, my inset function works pretty nicely. So now what I can do is I can select one edge, hit ring, and it will select a concentric ring again. Control, go to face mode, and then I can hit extrude. And that will allow me to extrude out, actually cancel that, I'm going to hit bevel. And that's going to let me to bevel out a nice little edge there for that surrounding portion of the TV screen. That looks okay. Yeah, that works alright for me. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop select my outer edges of this inner portion of the TV screen. And you'll notice that it's not selecting the corner here. And the reason for that is because I haven't triangulated these vertices here, and the corners have an n-gon. And whenever a loop or ring hits an n-gon, it stops. It doesn't realize or it doesn't understand what you want it to do. So that's okay. I'm going to have to turn off edge constraints now. Yeah, you just override it. You just tell it what you want it to do. But do it manually. So now I'm just going to scale this in. And actually going to make that a whole selection. And I'm actually going to pull it inwards. Because if you look at the TV, it's actually inset somewhat. And then I'm going to loop select, control switch to vertex mode, turn on edge constraints, and then I'm just going to slide this loop backwards, and that's going to follow the edge flow and round it out a little bit. And that works alright for me. And I'm just wondering if I need to add any more topology in here. But I think that's okay for now. So now I'm just going to work on slightly editing this silhouette here of the TV screen, because the TV screen itself does not quite have the exact same silhouette as the outer case of the TV screen. So I'm going to turn off edge selection mode, select all the outer vertices on the 4 corners of the screen, and I'm just going to scale them in. And that will serve to sort of round the screen out a little bit. And then I'm going to select the next ring of those vertices, the next outermost vertices, and I'm going to scale those a little bit too. And lastly, I'm not exactly liking how round the shape is here. So I'm going to turn edge constraints on, and I'm just going to scale this until it's a little bit more round. And same goes for these four verts. Scale them out until they're a little rounder. Now that's starting to work for me. I can start to triangulate some of this stuff. Okay. Just triangulate these corners off where I chamfered it. And that looks alright. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab these four center faces, turn off edge constraints, and I'm going to pull them outwards. And I'm going to hit F2 and F4 to put shaded mode on, just so I can try to take a look at how the shading is behaving. And it's not exactly behaving in the nicest fashion around the corners here. So what that tells me is I need some more geometry in here, just to try to get it to shade a little more nicely and to try to smooth a little bit nicely. So I'm just selecting my edges and then hitting ring, control select, and then hit ring until I have the entire outer ring selected, and then I'm going to hit connect. And then I'm going to go control and move to my selection, my vertex selection, and then I'm going to go over here to the weld tool, and I'm going to hit the weld dialog box. And then I'm just going to crank up the weld threshold until you can interactively see the verts on those four corners welding in together. And if I hit F4 again to get to my shaded view, you'll notice that that got rid of that shading error that was being caused by the triangles in the corner there. So now my TV screen actually looks fairly round. It's looking pretty nice. With the shader on there, it would look smooth enough for a game model. So I'm just going to hit save again. And I'm going to apply some smoothing groups here. I'll put that one in smoothing group number 8. And I'm going to give this outer lip let's see, we'll give this outer lip a smoothing group of 9. And that should just about do it for the TV screen. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. My newborn baby just started crying, so I had to go and feed him and take care of him, and just pause the video. Now I'm back. So where were we exactly? Oh yes, I was trying to decide what the next area to focus on should be, and looking at it, I think that the button panel will most likely be the best spot to deal with next. So because of the fact that if you look closely here, the button panel itself actually protrudes from the face, where the TV screen actually protrudes inwards, and the button panel protrudes outwards. Excuse me. So for that reason, I actually had to build the TV screen, the TV monitor, directly into the face so that it could protrude inwards. The button panel, I don't have to do that. So I can actually save some polygons, save some topology by building the button panel right on top of this front face here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into front view, and I'm going to go back over to my creation tab, to my geometry. I'm going to take another standard box. I'm going to hit F3 to go into wireframe, and then I'm going to just interactively drag it out to pretty much the shape that I see in the reference image. It doesn't have to be exact because I can edit it later. I'm just going to switch to left view and try to line it up. It looks kind of huge, but that's okay. Go back to perspective view now. Hit F3 to go back to wireframe shaded mode, and right click, convert to editable poly. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete my back face there because I'm not going to need it. And then I'm just going to try to get the shape and the proportions basically to a realistic level. I might make them a little bit larger just so they're noticeable if it were in a game, but to a pretty much realistic level. It'll help me if I turn off wireframe here to try to get the spacing right. So I think this could be pulled up a little bit, and this edge here could be pulled out. And I like where the bottom is sitting right now. So now that I've done that, I'm just going to select my TV object again, and rather than waiting around, I'm just going to attach it right away. I don't have any specific reason to leave it unattached, so I'll just go ahead and attach it. And then I'm just going to select by element and hide selected. And I just need to do a little bit of cleanup here with the triangulation that I did before. Because I'm just looking at this, and it seems that some of the stuff could be triangulated a lot better. I can get rid of a lot of this topology now. So that's what I'm going to do. Just try to triangulate all this stuff right over to the side there. Oh, wrong edge. Okay, remove, and then I'm going to target weld these polygons over. Just keep target welding until I get rid of all this extra topology that I no longer need. And then I'll just remove this edge. And that's looking a lot better. Yeah, I can live with that. Now, same with this corner here. I can probably do a little bit better here. Or maybe not better, but a little more aesthetically triangulated. And same goes for this corner down here. Okay, looking pretty good to me. While I'm looking here, actually, this edge here could use one more split. So I'll do a ring, connect, and then I will slide it up here. And then hit W to go to my move tool and just pull it outwards. And actually, now that I do that, I can probably try to put everything in the same smoothing group. Let's see. Control face mode, and we'll put everything in 9. See how that works. Yeah, doesn't look too bad. Okay. So now I'm going to save it, and then I'll go to element mode and unhide all, and that will unhide my button panel. So I'm just going to zoom in really close here on the reference, see what I'm working with. And so once again, the outer corners of this button panel here are rounded out. So I'm just going to select one edge, hit ring, and then I'm going to hit chamfer. Except this time, the chamfer amount is going to be a little bit lower. It's going to be round, but it's not going to be huge. A little bit more. And that looks pretty good to me. So we'll say OK. Then I'll grab the front face and hit inset to get my inset amount. Say OK. And then I'm going to do an extrude, but I'm going to extrude it inwards slightly. And then I'm just going to scale it inwards. I'm going to move to my scale tool. I'm going to scale it on the on the z-axis first, just a little bit, and on the x-axis. Now it doesn't look like that in the actual concept, in the image. It's not really scaled in, but I like to do that just a little bit. It gives you something to see. It gives the light something to catch. So that looks kind of nice. And then I'm just going to select these two edges here, hit ring, control face select mode, and set my smoothing group. Get some nice smoothing on those outer edges. That looks pretty good. So the next thing we have to do on this button panel is we're going to have this groove here where the volume knob slides, and then we also have the speaker grooves. The speakers behind this plastic panel. It's got the grooves in there. So I'm going to zoom out, and I'm just going to add some initial topology in here to divide it up. So I'm going to grab the edge, I'm going to hit ring, and then grab this edge and hit ring, and connect. Then I'm going to control switch to vertex selection mode, select edge constraints, hit W for translate, and I'm just going to translate it down until it looks roughly about the same as it does in the image here. That looks okay. Now I just want to triangulate some of the stuff at the bottom here. So I'm just going to control select both verts and then hit connect. I'll do the same thing at the top. And that looks okay for the plastic portion of the button panel. Now what I need to do is I think the first thing I'll do is I'll add the groove for the volume slider. So that's really simple to do. I'll just select the space here, hit inset, say OK, and then press R to go to scale tool, and just scale my new polygon that I created to the right shape, and then, turn off edge constraints, and then move it into position. I'm just going to eyeball its position here. I'm not going to make it exact. That looks kind of good. Now, from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit extrude again, extrude it inwards, and then I'm going to press R to go to scale tool, scale it in on the x-axis, hold control, and switch to vertex selection, and then I'm going to bring up the weld dialog, because I don't need that extra back face in there. I just need to indicate that there's a hole there. So I just want to weld away that back face. Say OK. And then I'm going to save it again. And then I'm going to want to add in these grid lines here. So to do that, I don't want to add any extra unnecessary topology. So rather than doing a full ring, I'm just going to grab these two edges and hit connect. And I believe I counted about 10. So I'm going to do 19 of these separations here. And 1, 2, 3. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Once again, same operation, extrude. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it inwards again, but if you leave it on scale by center of selection up here, under these different scale options, this button means scale by center of selection, so it's going to scale them all uniformly as one object. But what you can do is you can change it to scale by individual polygon, and that will scale each polygon separately. And then Control, switch to vertex selection, weld dialog, and weld it together. Say OK. That looks alright. Now you can see I save very often. It's just a habit of mine, but I think it's a good habit. Usually on any given model that I'm working on, I'll end up with anywhere between 50 to even 200 iterations of that model. I don't keep them all in the end, but it makes me feel comfortable to have them. So I like to do that. Now what I'm just doing is I'm going to triangulate these over to this upper vert here. So I'm just control selecting all the verts and then just hitting connect. It looks like a mess from this view, but it saves a lot of topology, and all of those triangles are coplanar, so you don't even notice it. So once again, control select and connect them all. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side. Just bear with me. It's a little bit of a tedious process. I haven't figured out another way to select all of those vertices without selecting ones that I don't want to select. So some cases, you just have to do things manually. You can't use those control and change selection mode shortcuts to make your quicker selections. Alright, that's all nicely triangulated. So now what I want to do is I want to create the volume button. I'm going to do a little bit of a workaround here. I'm just going to shift drag a copy of this hole, clone it as an element, not as a new object, and I'm going to pull it forward. Then I'm going to control switch, actually no, I'll just remove the center edge, and then I'll scale my polygon. So I'll scale it down to about roughly the right thickness, and then I'll scale it out to the right width. That looks about right, and then I'll bevel it. Just change my bevel height a little. See, okay, there you go. Button created. And just for kicks, I'll move it into position so it matches with the position in the image there. And then next up, actually I'll leave those volume knobs for last. I'm going to move down to the bottom here and okay, no, you know what? I changed my mind. I'll do the volume buttons or the channel buttons right away. So easy, just move over to my creation tab, standard primitives, cylinder, and drag out a cylinder. Just try to match it up here. Make sure it's pretty much the right size. Now I'm going to go over to my Modify tab. I'm going to change the number of sides. I think 18 sides is too many. 12 is okay. You'd want to go with higher if you're doing like film or a high poly model. But for a game model, 12 for something this size is pretty good. Actually, we'll go with 14. Okay. And now I'm going to change the height segments down to 1. And then go to Convert to Editable Poly. And then I'm just going to move this into position. Delete the back face. I'm going to translate this down and maybe pull it up just a little bit more. And I'm going to hit bevel to get that nice beveled sort of bevel that surrounds the outer edge of the knob, for lack of a better word. I'm going to say OK. And now what I'm going to do is, rather than trying to inset this and extrude it, because that would create a whole extra bunch of topology on this main polygon here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press R to move to my scale tool, and I'm going to hold Shift and scale inwards. So not only can you shift drag a copy, you can actually shift scale a copy with Polygon. So that's what I've done, and you'll notice that I didn't create any extra topology there. So that's always nice. Then I'm going to hit bevel. In the actual image, it's not really beveled that much, but I think it looks nice. So I'm going to take some artistic license and give it a bevel. Now, in this case here, because of the fact that this portion of the knob is moving, so I can actually have it separate. Like in the real model, it's a separate object. But these other extrusions here are not separate objects. So for that reason, I'm actually going to inset and extrude them. In a full-out in-game model, you wouldn't even model these in. They would be in the high poly in the normal map. But since I'm not doing one for this tutorial, I'll put them in now. So I'm just going to inset, then bevel, and then inset one more time, and get the right size, and then extrude, and then I'll do one last extrude, and then watch this. This is a good way to cap off a cylinder. You can just hold Control, go to vertex mode, and then hit collapse. And it will just automatically collapse all those vertices in towards the center of the cylinder. It's a nice quick way to cap off a cylinder. Now I'll just set some smoothing groups here. I'll give everything a smoothing group of 1. And then I'll select my outer edges here. Ring, Control, Face Selection Mode, and set them to 2. And I'll do the same thing with this back bevel here. Clear all, set to 1. And then I'll take my top polygon here, and I'll set it to 2. And then just to make it nice and clean, I'm going to cap it off as well. So rather than extruding, I'll just inset, select the vertices, and then hit collapse. Now that's a pretty high poly button. Once again, a lot of that would be in the normal map. But it looks alright. So now, the last thing I'm going to do is I need to add this square knob portion there. So I'm just going to draw a box on top of this, trying to line it up. And then actually I'm just going to, rather than manually moving it into position, I'm going to use this tool up here known as the Align tool. And that'll just align it to the pivot point of the knob. So then I can convert it to an editable poly. Select, wrong selection. Convert editable poly, and then select the back face. Move it into position. Select the front face. Move it into position. And then select my knob, select attach, grab my box, and then I'm going to go ahead and attach it to the TV. So select the TV, attach, select the knob, and then I'm going to select by element. I'm going to select these three elements, go to my front view, and I'm going to shift drag a copy of the button downwards. And then just to give it some variety and for fun, I'm going to rotate it so it kind of matches up with the concept image there. And there we have our two buttons. So not too much left to do here. I've got a couple of feet on the bottom of the TV, two knobs down here, and I have the antennae sticking out of the back. So let's start with the easiest one first. We'll do the feet. Go to top view. Oh yeah, might as well save it. Top view, grab a cylinder, draw it out. Since this is going to be under the TV and you won't really see it other than from a front view too much, I'm going to crank the sides all the way down. I'm just going to give them 8 sides. And then I'm not really worrying too much about the height of the cylinder right now. I'm just worrying about the size and shape. Okay, that looks alright to me. So I'm going to convert to editable poly, grab the bottom face, pardon me, okay, Max does not want to undo that operation. It's being strange. Yeah, it won't undo it for me. I'm not sure why, so I'm just going to try to translate this, eyeball it back into position. Normally if I was doing this for production, I would go and take the time and recreate it, but I'm not, so I'll just eyeball it back into position. Try this one more time, translate that up, and then I'm going to right click on the scale tool and scale the offset world in just a little bit. And then go to wireframe mode by hitting F3, delete the back face, and hit F3 again to go back to wireframe shaded. Now here's a cool little technique. If you have an object that is symmetrical, or rather the elements on it, you want them to be mirrored symmetrically across the center point of the object. Here's a cool little technique that you can use to do that. So I'm going to select the TV, I'm going to say attach, and grab the foot. Then I'm going to take the foot, select by element, and say detach. Why? So that the foot has now inherited the pivot point of the TV. So now what I can do is I can go up here to my Modify tab, and for some reason Max is taking a really long time to think right now, and I'm not sure what's going on, if it's thinking about crashing or what, but it seems to be hanging up. Alright, in any case, it didn't crash on me. It just took a little while to think. So I'm looking for this modifier called symmetry. What that'll do is it'll mirror the foot across the pivot point. So it mirrors it over to the other side. Now what I can do is I can go ahead and apply a second symmetry modifier, but I can change the axis for the mirror. I can switch it to Y and then hit flip, and now it'll mirror it again. So now I just put all 4 of those feet into position by doing that simple operation. Now all I can do is I can just grab the TV and attach the feet to the TV. Done. Now, to save some time here, I'm just going to grab one of these feet. I'm going to go to my left view. I'm going to shift drag a copy, and then I'm going to use my rotate tool and rotate it 90 degrees. And I'm actually going to use that foot as the geometry for one of these buttons. And I'll just scale it downwards a little bit, so it's not the exact same size as the foot. And then I'm just going to shift drag a copy over. And those are sticking out just a little bit too much for my liking. So I'll pull them inwards. And I think those are done. So last but not least, the antennae. So let's look at the back of the TV here. The first thing I can notice is I have a lot of unnecessary geometry back here. So I'm just going to want to get rid of a lot of that before I start doing anything else. So I'll just remove all those edges. Then I'll control select these vertices here. Remove those. And let's see. Lastly, I can try to target weld some of these loops away because I won't be using them for anything. Just try to target weld all of these loops towards the center here. Now the reason I'm keeping these center lines in is I may, if it came down to UVing it, it might be worth it to save some texture space, to get some texture quality, to only do a half or even a quarter of the back of the TV in texture, because you won't see it in the game as much. You probably won't see the back of the TV. The front is the area of interest. So what I could do is I could actually use these mirror lines or symmetry lines, and I could just paint a quarter of the texture and then drop the other UVs on top of it, and save a heck of a lot of UV space that I wouldn't want to waste on the back of this TV, but at the same time still keep the pixel depth the same for everything. So that's just a really good way to do that. And I find that most of the time in game engines, textures are a lot more costly than polygons, relatively speaking. So to leave a symmetry line in is not that expensive compared to 4 times the texture space wasted. So that's why I would go ahead and do that. Anyways, so now let's flip around to the back of the TV. I'm going to want something for those antennas to attach to. So I'm just going to draw a box, take my creation tab, standard primitives, and just draw a box. And then I'm going to drag it into position, convert to editable poly, delete the back face, and then just going to try to give it some shape here, so it's not exactly just a box. Alright, that looks okay to me. Not in love with the position yet, and I think the size could be a little bit bigger. And then what I'm going to want to do is I just want to round these edges. So I'm just going to select every single edge here, and then I'm going to hit chamfer. Just make it a little bit round. And then I'm just going to smooth it. Okay. Now we can attach that to the TV. And last but not least, the antenna. Grab a cylinder, draw it out, move it up into position, convert to editable poly, delete the bottom face, and then drag the antenna out to an appropriate length. Right click on the scale tool and scale those vertices in. Oh, pardon me. Also, I made this cylinder 8-sided, which is totally not necessary. I got ahead of myself. It's a really small, thin object. So you just really need some 3D form to it. It doesn't have to have that many sides. So I'm just going to remove half of them, turn it into a 4-sided object. That's better. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shift drag a copy, but this time I'm going to copy it as a copy. And then I'm just going to rotate it out and just bring up my concept there. See if I can get the angle similar. Yeah, that looks good to me. So now I'm just going to attach those antennae. I'm just looking at the side view of the TV now. The whole thing looks kind of fat now that I've added in some more of these details. So I'm just going to grab this whole back section here. Turn off ignore back facing. Grab the whole back section and just pull it inwards a little bit. Try to make it look less chunky. And lastly, these antennae are too straight. So I'm just going to ring connect. Whoa. 1, not 20. And then I'm just going to pull that. Try to make the antenna look like it's kind of a little bit bent or whatever. And that should do it. So now I'm just going to really quickly, because I always like to do this when I'm done with the model, just going to really quickly pull up my statistics here. If I can get it to show me the statistics, there we go. And then I'm just going to configure them to see what my triangle count is. So configure statistics, total plus selection. So right now the poly count is around 1,736 triangles. There's a lot of places I can optimize here. I haven't gone around and properly triangulated things off or optimized any unneeded polygons, deleted back faces of or bottom faces of the TV if you're not going to see that. If this were a true in-game model, I could probably pull out a few of these loops or omit some of the details I added in the button panel. Actually, a lot of them. So realistically, this model could be brought down to even several hundred polygons, maybe 500 or 600 polygons, rather than 1,700. This model is more somewhere in between a high and a low poly. But I think it served its purpose really well to demonstrate the polygonal modeling tools under the Modify tab of the editable poly, and also the symmetry modifier, which is quite possibly one of my favorite modifiers and my best friend. So this has been Caleb Aylesworth for CG Tuts, showing you 3D Studio Max poly modeling introduction. I hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for more.